Okay. Hey, we already got...
You have people here already? It's probably all intelligence officers. At least half intelligence officers.
Reality's Edge with Doc and Buddy will teach you how to contact
the beyond, and maybe a little further.
Scanning all possibilities. Scanning all possibilities. Data in. The most productive and stimulating use of your time would be the next episode of Reality's Edge with Doc and Buddy. Hey Doc, I know this show is called Reality's Edge, but I think I got a little too close to the edge. Oh, spaghettification.
All right. Hey, folks. How you doing today? Welcome back to another exciting edition of Reality's Edge. We're happy to have all of you here in the chat room today. We've got CE5 from Kent in UK, Renee, Sean, Thomas, Jules. Jules,
love you, Jules.
We're going to teach you Zoom, Jules. Don't worry about this. It's easy. And Mick. Mick, how you doing?
Mick is a good person.
Wow. We've got a lot of great folks here today.
Some real intellectuals, I see, from around the world.
Wow. Wow, we got some great stuff. Buddy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm curious, Doc. You know, we had this great little conversation before the show. Was the audience able to partake in some of that?
No, I had it on mute. It was just us, unless it leaked through somehow.
Well, I think that's that's an important conversation. If you don't mind, maybe kind of improvising and talking about that experience, because you had a really cool experience and it was meaningful to me, and it seems very meaningful in the general scheme of things. Would you care to dive in?
Before we do that, folks, does it sound okay out there, folks? Just let us know. Just want to make sure we're not getting an echo.
Can you hear? Can you hear?
Yeah, I think it's looking good.
Can you hear us?
You did partake. Wow. Okay, brilliant quality. Yeah, this is a nice change, guys. So the last time we did this show, I was up in my... I was camping. And I was doing it remotely with a hotspot, and we had some issues, if you'll remember. It kept cutting in and out. Sound level a bit high. Okay, let me turn it down. Thanks, Thomas. I've got a volume control here. I'll turn my mic down a little bit. This is the... Oh, guys, if you want the mic to use, this is the...
Wow.
The Yeti.
It's very robotic phallic.
Yes, it's very phallic and very effective. So... Yeah, buddy, can you get a bit louder?
Sure, testing. 1, 2, 3.
Can
testing.
you raise your mic up a little bit?
Raise my mic up.
Yes.
Mike. How's that sounding, gang?
Yep.
Beautiful.
So, Buddy and I were talking. Let's continue the conversation from last time. So I had these encounters with these animals out there, and because I'm only camping a little bit, during the year, I had a very aggressive deer. It happened when I came out. Well, it started when there were these sheep around that had either gotten there by escaping or someone was letting them graze. And I heard what I thought was a sheep mewing, and early in the morning I thought maybe it was in trouble. There's a lot of predators out there. And in any case, I went out and it was deer. Actually, deer can make a lot of different sounds, and I had sort of upset this deer by coming out at 3 a.m. I mean, let me just give you some advice, folks. Here, I'm going to turn it down. Thanks, Thomas. I'll turn it down a little bit. Don't go out. It is a little loud, isn't it? Here, I'm going to put it back a little bit. Okay.
Testing. 1, 2, 3.
You're good. I'm
one,
just
two,
a little
3.
bit on the loud side. Testing. 1, 2. Let's turn it down. Okay. So don't go out in 3 a.m. and start talking like we're talking now about these subjects to wild animals, because they're going to see you as freaking weird. And it upset this deer, and this deer was upset with me for a couple nights afterwards and kept every time I'd be out there around my campsite, it would start snorting and stamping.
Well, he was a buck, and
Yeah.
it was probably rutting season.
It was
So he
rutting season.
Raging with hormones, raging with
Yeah, this is last
primordial
September,
hormones.
and I really thought, I've heard that, you know, they can attack humans. Deer can
Yeah.
be aggressive when
Yeah.
you threaten them, and this was getting more aggressive every night. So I just decided I was going to back down, and I just had to accept that it wasn't really my, you know, this is the thing, and this is what we learn in RV, buddy, isn't it? Buddy, you're a little out of the mic, out of the camera, just so we can see you. Oh, you're not quite centered. Let's, yeah, now you are. That's better. Now we can see you in the light. Yeah, so, but Buddy wanted me to remind you, because this is like RV, and Buddy and I had this great conversation when I was driving back down through Wyoming a couple of weeks ago. Because what I had to do in my mind was realize that we sort of see ourselves as superior to wildlife, animals. I mean, we think we're the humans. We think we're the end all and the be all. We've been educated by our society to believe that.
We're so detached from nature, and we're so much a part of it. It's a magnificent biosphere of things that are required for us to even be alive, and we just don't
Yeah.
even think about it or appreciate it. And when you meet a deer that can kick your ass,
A deer that could kick your ass with antlers and everything, and you know, I'm not a fan of any unnecessary violence. So my thing is, how do I resolve this situation without anyone getting hurt, right?
yeah,
I mean, those animals have their lives out there, like we have
Yeah.
our lives. It means as much to them as our lives mean to us. You
Yeah.
know, they
maybe
yeah, maybe
your life might mean more to you than the deer in rutting season.
No,
when
but
he's raged in hormones.
No, but the deer's life means something to them too in their own way,
Of
as a
course,
sentient
sure.
being. You see, and
yeah,
this is
system
what.
is just as valid as your system.
Yeah,
It's
and you
right.
remember in Don Juan's book, you know, Castaneda's books with Don Juan, that he reminded us that we're all, you know, in some ways we're all equal in many ways, even to a bug. You know, we have our lives, we're born, we have our lives, and we die. We physically
Yeah.
pass on, and so I just had to kind of realize that this is the deer space. I had to kind of understand what was going on. It's not just that the deer has to move for me.
Yeah,
Even if I'm armed, it doesn't matter. It's as another being to another being. This is their space. This is what they do out here, and I had to give into that. And then it just stopped. The deer just never came back. As soon as I adopted that vibe, like the deer was, the deer was sort of the dominant animal out there. It was fine. It never came back.
you know what was
So-
happening there is a bunch of really sophisticated things were probably happening.
Yeah.
A form of communication where you were being submissive. It saw that you were being submissive and recognized that you were being submissive. It had to see that several times. You know, and there's a basic communication, I think, amongst all animals and all beings. And it even includes sounds. You know, sounds like a loud or low sustaining sound is a scary sound. But ones that go, oh, oh, you know, different note progressions indicate different emotions as well, too. So there's a whole sophisticated thing. He's making sounds and stomps, and you're retreating and being submissive. And over a period of time, that's how people build relationships with gorillas and all sorts of animals. There's a sophisticated communication.
and you've
going on.
reminded me of that, buddy, because I've encountered moose out there, and I'm working on a moose song. And you know, the next time I do my own live stream, we're going to play some guitar, and I've been writing songs. Buddy's heard them. I did the one about the hummingbirds, Gymongerus.
Love it.
Which was really funny. You know, you just kind of sit out there, and then I had these encounters with moose, and these songs came into my head. These old songs. It was really. I'm working on the song right now, but there's a line of communication when you surrender your own humanness to this other type of communication temporarily. I'm not saying permanently disappear, but you kind of let your story go. You'll hear more. And isn't this what happens when we do RV, buddy? This is what we're
Great
saying
example.
is you need to let that go to let the information come through. And this ego that we have, I don't think of it as a bad thing. I just think of it as a limited thing. You have to have it to survive, but it can't do everything you need it to do for you, which is goggles in the water. You need to see, but the goggles aren't going to get you to swim. It's
It's
just
like
a
the
lens.
tip of the iceberg.
It's the tip of the
And
iceberg.
for some weird reason, I always find it so weird that this other part of the iceberg underneath, this subconsciousness, is so foreign to me. It's the source of these beautiful, muses and things that come to you when you have these ideas and progressions, and it comes from that space. And it's so interesting to get to know that space, that subconscious space. And
subconscious.
that's the heart of RV too, is letting go of that top of the iceberg and letting the bottom of the iceberg be its part in nature, be what it is,
Yeah, Bud, can you slide a couple inches to the right? Yes, and keep it that way so we can see all of you. Buddy, you can't read the comments.
This is very cinema.
Buddy, am I right?
Okay.
You're not reading the comments, right? You're not in
No,
you're not
comments.
logged into the realities. So I'll read them to you. So slide back to the right a little bit. Yes, you got to hold it like that so we can see you. Otherwise, you're starting to slide off the camera. Now you're off the camera. Now we just see you. Now you're freaking me out.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. So this is
I like the cinema verite. Okay, but go ahead.
Nope, slide back to the right. There you go. Okay.
I'm doing a universal communication. I'm not fully comfortable being centered yet.
Okay,
I'm shy, and I'm slowly coming to be centered and comfortable as there we go.
So, buddy, you were telling me this. You were saying something very interesting when we had this conversation a couple weeks ago, right before Thanksgiving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it had to do with our relationship to resonant viewing, to remote viewing. And you had this realization about it, which is somehow if you let go of having to prove anything or make it do anything for you, all of a sudden it got a lot better. Am I right in that summation?
Yeah,
what were you
time.
saying? The way the resonance works? Because this is what I found, but I always have trouble
There's
explaining
two
it.
parts to it. And so a brilliant scientist gave me these Zen-like words. And he's like, this is going to be a no judgment zone. And you need to feel comfortable to fail big.
Right.
Because if you're really a scientist, we all are scientists. We're all exploring our world and getting to know things. Technically, we're all a scientist. And as a scientist, you never fail when you do an experiment and it doesn't go the way you want. It's never failure if you're learning something. So that real concept of saying, I'm going to try something really big, and if it doesn't work, I'm learning something. I'll say, okay, I'll mark this off the list. And part of being tenacious is being willing to fail big and in a no judgment zone. And you have to create that no judgment zone within yourself too. There's going to be skeptics around you sometimes, and your no judgment zone has to be big enough to be like, I can fail big in front of these people, just go for it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's kind of the exhilaration of letting your subconscious go, really going for it, feeling that the stakes, and it's life, the stakes, come on, it's worth it.
Right. And it's one of the biggest impediments, isn't it, in when we teach it in the class and so forth. Isn't that right? Is that people okay, so this is the thing, folks. When I did my live stream last week, I didn't get all the questions. I kind of felt a little bad about that later because I saw them, but I couldn't. So I'm going to keep note of them, buddy, as we go along. We will get back to this Galactic Federation question in a moment.
Good.
This is really good, yeah. So, but we wanted to talk about this because it's important, folks, because when I teach the class, buddy, when you teach people, you deal with this because you had it when you came to Polder, you taught people how to do PK, remember, that morning before I showed up early. And and I know, and all of you know that are watching because you've tried this either in the class or with someone else or just working at home, is there's this fear of failure, and it's totally out of proportion to reality because there is no failure in RV.
Such an important point.
There's just information. And it's that fear, and it was that same fear that I had with the deer that I had to let go of, and I realized it's all just one system here. There's no winners. That's just in your freaking mind. It doesn't really work that way. In the end, we all get eaten by microbes. They're already in your gut. We get eaten by fungus that's already inside you. It's just waiting for you to pass on and eat you. You know that. And it works like with the bugs, with the animals. And at sense, we're all equal. And you're equal with the target. The process is just what it is. And once you go there, that's when you're in that zone, right? Of everything being connected. Everything's accessible. The information starts to flow. And that's
such
why
a
Ingo
big
said
point.
we were in this reality box, because we've been brought up in this industrialized educational system with testing and making you feel like you got to achieve a certain amount so that you can, I don't know, achieve a certain status in society. I don't know, whatever it is. It's
it's
conditioning.
challenging your creativity too, because if you let yourself go, not just in a general sense, in specific ways. For me, synesthesia, I had little bits of synesthesia throughout my life, but I communicated with Maureen Seberg and learned more about synesthesia and learned that it was actually a cool thing to have two senses applied to a target as opposed to just one. And you're getting kind of more information when you can taste a sound, or, feel a
Synesthesia,
flavor.
yeah.
And if you allow yourself that possibility could happen to you. And how wonderful is that? So we don't know what we don't even know to let go of. But this relationship we have with nature is really cool. And I thought there was something really interesting, especially in terms of like ET stuff, because with deer, you have to have, two animals have this relationship, and it's a physical, known, unspoken language between all species. It's really true that, lowering one's position and, baring one's teeth shows anger. Making certain sounds at certain progressions shows anger or happiness. Retreating, all these different things is a real communication. And it makes me think of the many times with UFOs, someone will flash a light twice, and then the UFO will flash twice. Then the human on the canoe will flash 3 times, and ET will be like, come on, you've got to be more sophisticated than this.
Yeah. No. Communication. So someone's saying here, Bud, DRSVS, whoever that is saying more deer and less fear.
More deer and less fear. Right on. I like that.
And that's a good way. But, Thomas has a comment here about if you can focus on the small details and you need to go back to the bigger picture in RV. We have a name for that, Thomas, by the way. It's called doorknobbing. I think that's what Ingo called it, or the people he worked with. At least Lynn Buchanan calls it doorknobbing. And that's when you get focused on one little thing and you can't see the bigger picture. And that's why you have movement exercises, to kind of see a bigger picture. But anyway, Buddy, what you're saying is very important. I mean, it's sort of letting go of that expectation. It's a paradox. This is what I love about viewing RV. It works with CE5, animal communication. Spending time out there, farther away from people, more towards animals, we don't even understand our own planet.
We don't.
We don't even understand. How are we going to understand ETs? We don't even understand these creatures. They're probably communicating to us in their own way, and we don't listen.
And our whole body is filled with all sorts of other little creatures.
Oh,
We're really
yeah.
a system.
Microbiome.
We forget that we're part of a system. We think we're the center. Like pre-Galileo, they thought everything revolved around Earth. And, as humans, we think everything revolves around being human. But, we're part of this system. And, I think sometimes, like, especially with the ET stuff, people are trying to communicate and wonder why there's so many different, encounters lately, and why the communication is so brief and odd, and what does it mean, and why couldn't there be more direct communication? I think it goes down to some of those really basic system things.
Fear.
Fear, and there's a universal communication. I think oftentimes with the tuning fork, we want to be the fork that strikes the tone first and not the receiver. And oftentimes with RB, you want to be the receiver. You don't want to be conscious and be the dinger, the first tuning fork that sends the sound to make the other one vibrate. It's better to be that second one that picks up the vibration. And there's, people can choose to live their life the way they want to. But in the exploration of these arts, and I consider them arts, esoteric arts, these are just really key aspects. Key points of reference.
They're very key. Now, we've all been taught by socialization. You have to work really hard to achieve anything you want, right? You got to work. Mm-hmm. You got to really work at it. You got to go to school, blah, 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 this, right? And eventually you'll achieve something. You'll become a person. I don't know. Something will happen. Your life will really start once you've graduated high school. That's when life really starts. Or, okay, no. It's when you graduate college. Wait a minute. When you get your degree, that's when life really starts. No, not that. When you get tenure. No.
Be able to get away with this.
Not when you get tenure. It's when you get into the, the retirement home. I mean, it never. Yeah, this is already built into us. You don't have. It's from day one. You are built in with this connection, and it gets narrowly and more narrowly focused by our socialization as we become professionalized, until we've completely forgot who we are by the time you reach an adult age.
We were talking about this last week. There are a few scientists who come out and talk about this world that's not within the safety bubble, but is real reality that human beings don't like to face because it's not easy. It's on reality's edge. There are things that are just within our perception. And sometimes throughout history, they've taken the form of spooky phenomena. And there's a bunch of phenomena now, and there's bold and daring scientists who are daring enough to risk their reputation to come out and talk about it. And I think that's really cool. We were talking about that before. It takes guts.
It does, buddy. I've started reading more about cryptids over the past couple of weeks. I knew about Bigfoot. I didn't know about Dogman. I've been reading books by P.D. King. I've gotten them as Kindle books from Amazon. Well, these are people that have collected stories like I did for Black Swan Ghosts of people's encounters with cryptids. And this is something that's been encountered at Skinwalker Ranch. And, how much of reality are we not seeing, buddy? Because we're afraid every time we go beyond the edge, reality's edge, way we've been taught, that something's going to happen to us, or that fear comes in. And these things are around us, and have we limited our perception to such a narrow bandwidth to play it safe that we don't perceive reality anymore?
Maybe we're creating some of them. And that's the scariest thing of all. Thinking that literally our minds and our thoughts, either singular or cumulatively, could have a real physical impact on the world. But we know it does in practical ways. Human beings are one of the few species that can pass on information and data. So we can break boundaries collectively by passing on data, where no one human could have all that data knowledge, but over time we learn from the previous one, and we're tenacious little greedy bastards of a species. We're insatiable, we're incredibly insatiable, and we have this intrinsic understanding of good and our place in society, and we don't like to believe that these other weird abilities exist. But when a scientist comes out and says, hey, ESP is real if you really look at the studies and research. And I was reading about Kit Green talking about it and saying that it was true. And, there's people who come out like Eric Davis who talk about the materials and risk their career, and, Hal Puthoff, and other people who come out and talk about the real deal stuff. And, Hathaway, Dr. Gallenberger will come out and talk about PK. You will come out and talk about RV. These people, I think in my book, are, you guys are all heroes of reality's edge. And you're turning phenomena into reality. And, throughout history, there's been phenomena, and over time it's become science, So
and over time, and I'll just say one more thing about that, buddy. I was very disappointed. I mean, I was reading an issue of Science. I had a pile of them. This one was from 2019, right? And they had an article about mind tricks. I thought, oh, maybe they're, what are they getting at? And it is a review of a book about magic and illusion. And they make some reference to what they call the paranormal, even though they never define what that is. And then they have quotes from James Randi about how it's easy for people to fool themselves and people want to be fooled, and this is the basis of the paranormal. I'm thinking, that is not it's not a scientific approach. That's science. That's fiction. They have a quote from James Randi, but not from Hal Puthoff, not from Russell Targ, not from Stephen Schwartz, not from Kit Green.
Yeah.
I mean, they've missed 100 years of science about all these phenomena, and they lump it into paranormal, and they say, well, people want to be fooled. That is the most...
I call that lazy.
I'm almost thinking of canceling my subscription. I mean, guys, I've had a 30-year subscription to this magazine. No wonder they don't talk about this. They lump it into something, belief in the paranormal. What the hell is that? I mean, excuse me, folks. This is just unscientific. And I've been banned from Google and Facebook for advertising my RV classes because they concluded it wasn't real. RV's not real. Can you imagine that? Put that reason. This is a deceptive sort of practice, and I'm thinking this is where they get this from. This is why this is just my business advertising, not as a person. I'm just talking. You can advertise on them, and there have been times I've done that, and I don't bother with it anymore because they see it as some sort of guys. You are so far behind reality. It's no wonder we have things like COVID. They're not doing science. They're staying in their little bubble. Sorry, I don't mean to go off too much of a rant here. Let us get to some questions here. I think you know what the point is. There's not a serious consideration. I mean, you know, Kit Green, we've all talked to many of these people in RV. I've lucky enough to go on to the RV conferences starting at the very beginning when Ingo used to be there. Believe me, there's plenty of science behind all precognition, all of this. Daryl Bem and others have done
tons of research.
They always get these highly statistically significant outcomes that show you do get glimpses of the future. And it's shown in Dean Radin's presentience experiments. They show different photos and you have a reaction, galvanic skin response before you see the photo. The computer hasn't even chosen the photo yet. It's established, but they won't. Yep. These institutions, I'm afraid, might completely fall behind, buddy, because they won't look at the data. They simply want to have their fun. It's all magic. It's just like magic tricks. See, both Daryl Bem and Russell Targ started out as stage magicians who noticed that sometimes the audience was too accurate, or they did readings that were too accurate for magic, and they were wondering if something else was going on. A lot of people get interested in this way. That's how Russell started. He worked his way through college as a magician at parties.
Yeah.
And Daryl Bem,
as a stand-up comedian, I used to be able to guess the occupation of people in the audience, like even the really weird ones. You're a mortician, and be like, "How did you know?" And it just statistically happened. I think we really limit ourselves. It's this little bubble that we're in. But some of these daring scientists have come out and said this can happen. We've only literally believed in electromagnetic field for 200 years. It's only been installed for 100 years. Before that, the sparks on carpets and the zaps when you touch people and the electric fish and all these different things were real weird phenomena people didn't understand. If you took two different pieces of metal on a dead animal's leg, you could make the leg jump. How could you make a dead animal move? It was phenomena. And now we know it's the electromagnetic field.
No, well said. And these sorts of discoveries are still going on. But there's a big chink in the armor, and we are going to get to questions in a sec. We've got a ton of questions, buddy. But I just think the thing about COVID and coronavirus, it shows how ill-prepared science is for reality. I'm sorry, guys. It failed. We can't even get regular, inexpensive, easy-to-get testing, and we can spend trillions on nuclear weapons, but we can't do testing. Is there something wrong with this picture? Think about the situation we're in. The United States being the corona king right now. It's ridiculous with all this technology we have and all these systems, buddy. And
it turns science into politics.
It just became, and it's useless. And here we all are kind of sequestered away. It's going to go on for another year, it looks like. Quite a while.
At least.
The vaccine, maybe it works for a couple months at a time. Nobody knows. See, so if we don't know this much about very common coronaviruses, which are not new folks, SARS too has been around for like a couple decades. If we know so little about viruses, how the heck can these guys come out and say that the paranormal is just belief in magic and that UFOs are just ice particles when they can't even understand a freaking virus? They have no authority with me anymore. I'm sorry. They're a joke. I'm sorry they are a joke. They put down these topics that we're talking about without even looking at the evidence. And this virus comes along and just kills 2,000-3,000 people a day. And we're 9 months into it and nobody can do anything about it. They don't even understand that. How can you expect to understand or even feel that you have authority to even issue a statement about these other phenomena where good researchers like you're saying, have spent decades showing that it's real?
And this is exciting phenomena. This is the stuff on the very edge of our understanding. It should be exciting. It should be compelling. Like, where do these energy sources come from? What is really the cause behind this extraordinary circumstance? Is there a correlation, between the electromagnetic field and some of this phenomena? Solar flares. Is it dealing with the electromagnetic lines of force that our planet has, just like a magnet? And there's so many cool questions that we
so many
pose.
cool questions, and even what does quantum mechanics mean? To this day, nobody knows exactly how things can be both particles and waves. Does it describe
the Enneon was just
the Enneon
discovered? The Enneon was proven 2 different ways, and it's like a 2-dimensional particle, and it exists kind of. It's a new form of matter.
Yeah, the Enneons are particles that can become any particle they need to be. And I'm a fan of the menyons. The menyons are particles that move between parallel realities. I'm just hypothesizing. I just had, buddy, I read about the Enneons a couple months ago, and I thought, well, what about the menyons?
Or the Klingons.
Okay.
We're completely neglecting
the Klingons. We are neglecting them and the Romulans, and if we don't watch out, the Romulans and the Vulcans are going to get into a fight. Okay, I just predict this. So, okay. Buddy, we've got so many questions, and I really feel like we should go back to the beginning. Mick, you were one of the first to get the questions in here. He wanted to know what we think about 411 missing people in Alaska and other national parks. According to what I read, is it something thousands of people have disappeared around Mount Hayes since 1988? Thousands and thousands. Do you have any idea? This is a difficult subject to talk about. What do you think about missing people in these very remote areas where there's no sign of other people being around? They just vanish. What do you think could be happening, bud?
Well, people are going to hate me for saying this, but I'm kind of familiar with the situation. Oftentimes it'll be a child will be found 5,000 feet in elevation in like 8 hours.
Right.
Why would they do that? And all these incredible situations, and people disappear. And you know what? This has happened throughout history.
Yeah, it has. Yeah.
The woods are where people go near the end of their life, when they're depressed and they're dying, when they're murdered sometimes. There's all these other factors that happen. And sometimes you can take a dynamic bunch of factors that are individual but real and conglomerate them into a mystery and make it bigger than it really is. It's conceivable, one of the delightful kind of notions about it is that maybe they're being taken by aliens, which would be fun and awesome, and that's one of the best alternatives possible. But in reality, I think it's something much more mundane and tragic,
Well, what about when you do have these kids that seem to, they've disappeared and then they show up again and they've searched that area many times and kids don't remember where they've been and they end up way too far for where they should have been in without shoes. I mean, miles away and stuff.
Way up a mountainside and things like that. Kids are crafty little bolts of electricity, and they will do things. They can hide like ninjas. They can do things that we just don't suspect of the innocent littleness of them. And they can, if charged and motivated and hormones and all that stuff and fantasy or whatever, they can climb up half of a mountain in a night nonstop. Kids have more energy than adults. So I think a lot of this is more mundane. Sadly, I'd like to say that it's
okay. Well, what about when it's groups of hunters that disappear?
Here's the Dyatlov Pass. Remember that famous one where the winter pass and all the people, they stay there, then they all end up broken bones and all this stuff and shattered and separated from each other. People thought it was aliens and all this stuff. And I RV'd that one, and I saw that they just one guy went apeshit. They were snowed in. It was through the winter. They ran out of food. They ran out of supplies. One guy went apeshit and basically ended up killing everybody, and they lived as a partial cannibal. And so that was like a logical explanation for what had happened, rather than, the most extreme thing that, another being from another planet came and beat them up and left. I think human beings are much more surprising than we give ourselves credit,
Okay, I can understand that point of view. It's not something that I know a huge amount about. Obviously, we've interviewed Terry Lovelace on the channel, who was taken into that triangular craft with Toby at Devil's Den.
Yeah, I believe the UFO
State
cases,
Park in Arkansas. There was that. Well, he starts the book by mentioning all the other weird disappearances and things in that park. So I'm open to other possibilities. Buddy, what you're saying definitely could be part of it.
I think it's about 90%.
I need to have more information to make a determination what is. I'm open, just having talked to Terry, that there could be other things going on. But it's true, buddy. People, and here's an important point, what you're saying. People do strange things, unpredictable things sometimes. We can't blame that on the supernatural or other things.
Yeah.
People just have weird psychological things. That can be part of it. And many things can happen that just have more ordinary explanations. Let's leave it open. Leave it at that. How about that? So we have another question. Let's see. Mick asked another question. Thanks, Thomas. I think we're okay with Ecamm at the moment. I did try OBS. Thomas asked about the setup we're using. I did try OBS. I couldn't get the sound to work on OBS. So, Thomas, on my Mac, I did try some of the fixes, but I was going into open source software. I was going into forums to look, and I couldn't figure it out. So I eventually ended up Ecamm, and this seems to work pretty well for the moment. But thanks for that. I'm open to other possibilities too. Buddy and I were just talking about that. So another question was about Bigfoot and Dogman. So the Dogman is just interesting. The Bigfoot, what have I learned so far? And I'll let you chime in a second, buddy, is I haven't encountered Bigfoot myself, but I know 3 people in Colorado who've encountered Bigfoot. One was a realtor in very remote locations, and someone that took my RV class. 2 people have taken my RV class. In one case, it came right up onto the porch of their house near Colorado Springs in a kind of suburban area. And this woman, she was meditating. She saw it in her mind's eye. She was upstairs. She couldn't physically see it, but she saw it in her mind's eye. And then it screamed, and the woman downstairs in the kitchen saw it. And she saw it in her mind's eye, exactly what the woman had seen. It like telepathically went, it's a telepathic creature. So I've read a lot about Bigfoot. I have no doubt Bigfoot exists. My belief is that Bigfoot's an interdimensional creature that can do some sort of time slip walking. It can slip into another dimension. There's no other way I can explain the way people say it sounds like a freight train coming through the forest at you. I've actually had other friends from Salt Lake that were camping in the mountains that had this experience. It's just coming at you like a freight train. Joe McMonagle has talked to his RV classes about his Bigfoot encounter. They actually lost a dog to the Bigfoot when they came back. I'm going to see if I can talk to him about it because
Could it be, potentially, is it conceivable, or as conceivable, that it's an interdimensional creature, that it is a construct of the mind somehow? Or minds, plural?
No, I'm going to take a more physical approach. I mean, certainly things can be a construct. My take on it is it's one of the original inhabitants of the earth, and that we're a dumbed down version of Bigfoot, basically. That somehow there was some genetic modification of Bigfoot that we're a version of that lost the telepathic abilities. And that it is a physical creature. Because the reason I would say that, buddy, is the descriptions are so common all over the United States, Canada, the world. The smell, the hair, the behavior, the throwing the stones, the braiding of horses' manes out in your fields, the stick structures. There's a museum near here in Bailey, Colorado. And I'm always so surprised when they show some of the stick structures that people have seen out here in the Rockies, how similar they are to the other stick structures, built kind of like little structures. And the behavior is so similar around the world. I just have to believe that's the way I see it, as an interdimensional native inhabitant of the planet. I'm
unsure. My verdict is unsure. I keep an open mind about it, but I'm definitely unsure.
I'm just going from the witness testimony. I haven't written a book about it, but I've talked to enough people that have seen it, been involved in. It's so similar. The color of the hair, the features of the face around the United States. And the more you read about it, the more you think, how does this sort of... Because, buddy, the thing about seeing it as a mental construction is it leaves dents in your car stuff. It can throw rocks at you when you're in. See, they have this behavior that they like to play with people. For the most part, it's not violent, but it can be. I mean, they've been known just to chase deer and snap them in half, and dogs too. So they can be violent, but they're not always that way. Thankfully, they just seem to. Now, they just seem to enjoy playing with us and coming up to your tent. Oh, I know another guy that was grabbed out of his tent in the middle of the night and pulled about 30, 40 feet from the tent. And then
there's also like the Loveland Frog Monster, and there's Lizardmen, and the New Jersey Devil.
Yeah.
There's a lot of these types of real creatures. They're seen by police officers.
Yeah.
They're extremely unusual cryptids, and
Yes.
you're left to believe that these occurrences happened, but you're left with what in the heck could be a possible explanation for them.
Well, the thing, okay, so here's what Mick is breaking. Mick in the Pickle is bringing this point up, and this is something we need to consider. They encounter these creatures before they even had them in their imagination. They never imagined such a thing could exist. And just to go back to Dogman, I just started reading about Dogman last night. Now, that guy, Matthew, who I was on his Skype YouTube channel about half a year ago, Matthew Hine, I think it is, another Hines. He talked about Dogman, so I started reading. So Dogman, the thing about Dogman is it can be on all fours or it can walk on two legs. Groups of them, people run into them in remote areas. Jules, I just read about someone that encountered Dogman in Alabama, so in remote areas. So Mick is saying people bump into them, and there's a consistency between the people. But that's the thing about it. It's not just, a devil man here and a mothman here, and it's very individualized to the person. I mean, I understand what you're saying about that. It just seems to be, okay, Bigfoot leaves behind hair. They've analyzed it, and it's not identifiable as any hominid we know. It's a hominid, but not one we know.
But see, there are places around the world, and like Skinwalker 2, where things that are almost on the verge of your subconscious that you don't even control can take on a physical form.
Yeah.
A mysterious physical form.
That is true, too.
And there's poltergeist activity that's oftentimes surrounds a prodigious savant female who's
true
and doesn't have an emotional release, but somehow a physical thing can happen. Buddhists talk about being able to create a tulpa, a living little creature.
No about it. Yeah.
That ultimately would have to be the highest form of psychokinesis, and if it's an explanation for someone who investigates some of the metamaterial told me something really spooky, and it stuck with me. When describing what the metal was like, said it's more like an aport. And that just made me think, also, there's a lot of things that make you wonder. There's a lot of possibilities. Jacques Vallée said something. He studied it so well. A genius scientist and made all these inventions. Jacques Vallée says it seems like a control system.
Yeah, that's his point of view on it. A control system.
And what does that mean? What does it mean to you, John?
Well, that's his point of view on it. I'm not sure that's what it is. If you look at it from that point of view, he believes in his most recent book I read, Forbidden Science, Volume 8. He's written a bunch of these forbidden. Yeah, he goes all his conversations with Hal and Kit and everybody. I guess he feels after 20 years he can just lay it all out. Everything people told him and behind the scenes, Yeah. And he says it's like a thermometer, a thermostat. A thermometer, When the temperature goes below a certain temperature, it turns on. When it goes above, the cooler comes on. But his explanation, I don't know if he still believes in it, but that explanation also has a lot of questions, Bud, because who would have designed this thermostat? It's almost like what he's saying literally is all of these phenomena, and he's going in your direction here, are a way of getting us to evolve. And they're all playing around, whether it's fairies or goblins or UFO inhabitants. It's coming from this galactic simulator, holographic simulator, like on Star Trek. And it's just doing this it's like Grant Cameron recently said, someone asked him, why do these UFOs, why do they glow? And he said, because they want to be seen. They're playing. That's just one point of view on it. I'm not sure I agree with those guys on that, but that's the way you could look at it. And again, we've gotten into the discussion before, but about the evolution of UFOs changing from airships to green fireballs to train. You know where I'm going. So That's the point of view on that. That's one way to look at
They seem
it.
to reflect near future technology.
Right.
in,
right.
in human consciousness types of ways. So it's fascinating to think about. When you say control system, to me, it makes me think of an animal in a zoo, in a protected area of space, a creation. Maybe that's why we don't see a bigger universe, because we're kind of like in a open air zoo.
Yeah.
And the strange flashes of lights are really tourists, like the flashes of lights
They're
the gorillas
tourists.
see behind the glass.
Yeah.
We think it's another dimension, but it's just a tourist behind the glass taking pictures to show their family.
It could be. We
So,
don't know.
We don't know. It could be a control system like that.
That's why I like you, buddy. That's why I like having these conversations. I like our audience. I don't know. I just like throwing out the possibilities and seeing where the evidence falls. It's not that I don't want an explanation. Obviously, I'm like the rest of you. I'm really curious. I just don't believe in being overly confident in my explanations, because how do I really know? How does Buddy really know? Nobody knows. These are ideas.
He knows.
Buddy,
knows.
the Buddy really knows.
He knows.
This guy knows. So we don't really know, but that's the Valet point of view. But at the same time, Valet has gotten big time into the materials analysis, hyper-physical stuff you can analyze. He has those PowerPoint presentations that he made public.
And some big news may be coming up in the near future, yeah.
I see. A metamaterial. So this is on the other side of it. This is really physical. Now, at some level, Buddy, we do all create our reality in the biggest holographic, multidimensional way possible. But that's true for this microphone in front of me and everything as well. But it doesn't mean that things don't really. I don't think that means reality doesn't exist. It means it's tuned. It's tuned to our frequency.
Maybe
and
it's
big.
co-created. Maybe it's co-created.
Well, it would have to be in some way. Yeah, I can go along with that. Yeah. No.
Yeah, it just sometimes it seems so oddly co-created. But it's always a never-ending mystery. It's not like you get to the point where the mathematicians get to a certain level of math and say, "Oh, we found the end. That's it. We're done with math." It seems to be this never-ending, unfolding, beautiful flower of mystery.
Yeah, that's one thing we can all agree on here. It's much more mysterious than we're willing to accept, and much more than society has taught us, and that any of the mainstream stuff ever gets into. It is considerably more mysterious. And one of those physicists said it's even more mysterious. It's not. It's almost more mysterious than we can even conceive.
It's mind-boggling. I've seen things
mind-boggling.
that I never thought I could see.
Synchronicities and.
It's
amazing.
I've done things that I've never thought I could be able to do.
Yeah, I know. We don't really know who we
And
are.
when it happens, you're just as mystified and stupefied as anybody. You're like, it's almost like you're watching someone else do it. And it's amazing when you get a target right, or all these different things come out right, or PK or healing, or any of these edge phenomena kind of explorations that people are even afraid of talking about. Otherwise, it could be perceived as satanic or, you know.
Oh, no, that's definitely true. Buddy, we got a question here.
Please.
Have you heard, do you have any opinions? This is from Mysterious Oklahoma. I'm sorry if I'm taking a while to get these questions, but they're also good.
Please.
Deserve a Mena, Arkansas. Levitating rocks, orbs, Bigfoot at Board Camp Crystal Mine. Have you heard of this?
Never.
Okay, I haven't heard of it either. Sorry, it's not something we know about. But again, this is something that Buddy and I have talked about, that certain spots are gateways. They're more interdimensional than other spots. And it could
They're
be
exploits.
elucidating things from you. Buddy and I have often talked about how at Skinwalker, it almost seems to match what the scientists are expecting to see.
It's like a magic feather.
That episode of Star Trek where they go down to a planet and they start seeing what's in their imagination. Sulu sees a huge
If you
rabbit.
believe it's something,
Yeah.
If you believe it's something, it's gonna be something. Belief is so powerful. We have no idea.
And I should say one thing about Bigfoot is that David Noble Whitecrow has a different opinion than all of us. And I've had him on the show. We're going to do another show again soon about Bigfoot because he wants to come on and talk about his interviews with people. He believes it's purely ET, designed to look like a hominid.
That's possible.
And it's designed to capture your soul essence or something. I can't verify that, but that's another point of view on this. So just keep all of them in, none of us really know exactly. Here's the thing, folks. Can I say something really quickly here, Bud? You need
Please.
to use discernment. Don't believe anything that anybody is saying about this. Not even me or Buddy, because we don't really know. It's our best approximation given all of our experience and data. We come up with our ideas. Buddy has his ideas about it. I have mine. But you shouldn't believe any of us. You should believe yourself based on your experience, because nobody really knows. Everyone from your kindergarten teacher onward has been brainwashing you to believe in authority. And the big thing here is stop believing in authority and believe in yourself. I think Buddy and I agree in that 100%, because nobody really knows.
And you can explore anything you want to explore. There's no shame. There's
No
no
shame.
failure.
There's no failure.
No judgment
Just
zone.
explore it and tell us we won't judge you. Just tell us what your experience is. This
And
is
go
why I don't have a rigid belief about any of this until I really have tons and tons of evidence. And,
You can see things. I see things,
I'm-
Doc, and I still have to frame it in a way that almost like it's just sterile to what I know happened, what I experienced happened. When I see a craft, several times, I know what I've seen. I know what I've seen. I've seen what I've seen.
right.
But then when I'm talking about it in general, I have to, you have to kind of. This subject is extraordinary.
It's extraordinary,
and
and-
we're blessed to be in and out of
it's
reality's edge. Literally,
We have hard data on all these subjects. We have hair from Bigfoot. We have footprints. I ran into a guy at one of the UFO conferences a couple years ago outside of it was at Fountain Hills at the Native American reservation there outside of Phoenix by about an hour. Yeah. And forgetting Scottsdale. Anyway, he said that he had a neighbor who these guys had owned that airplane magazine that used to be in every, in the seat pocket in front of you. There was that airplane Sky Mall.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Sky Mall, of course.
So he knew the owner of Sky Mall, and this guy invited him over many times to his garage to see Bigfoot casts, because the Sky Mall people had bought a ton of land in Oregon, Bigfoot country, and this guy had tons of Bigfoot impressions that he showed this guy as a younger person, and he said, "I saw the cast, these big feet, big feet. I can't say anything." So there is physical evidence of all this: precognition, RV. A buddy was talking about poltergeist. Now, if this is a phenomenon we'll have to get into, it's even the people at Skinwalker said it followed them home. Some of the researchers, it seems, and this reinforces Buddy's point of view, that it has something to do with you, or it wouldn't be following you home from one place to be. Families move to get away from poltergeist, and it starts all over, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the power of your consciousness.
So it has something to do with us too. It has a physical side, it has a consciousness side, and it's very challenging to totally come to one. It's not purely empirical. It's a mix of things, and this is why science has been reluctant to try to tackle it, but it happens.
It's
and
not one tuning fork. There's two tuning forks.
There's two tuning
and
forks.
sometimes we think we're the thing responsible for making the other thing rattle. But in reality, there are many occasions when we're the one that's being rattled by something and we don't know what the heck it is.
Yeah, and okay, so CE5 in the UK is saying rattling, Rendlesham Forest. So now we know that people were exposed to terahertz radiation. We're told it was even in the Condign report. Remember,
multiple different crafts.
They made reference to this terahertz radiation and it's ball light. They said it was balls of light that these guys mistook for an object on the ground. I don't buy it, but even in the Condign report, which is the government, Ministry of Defense, MOD internal report that was declassified, they talk about Rendlesham and injuries. And we've had Gary on this channel, Gary Sterling, who was injured at Minot from UFO. So there is, at an extreme level, Buddy, there is physical injury sometimes from being around the radiation of these objects.
Yep.
So,
and there's many cases of, and Kit Green has a whole series of military personnel that have been exposed to one of these objects, and they get an incredibly dangerous broadband radiation across their whole body. And they have these, I think it was in the Silver Record, and even showed some of the CAT scans with these unusual white matter in the brain.
Yeah.
And to me, those sound like, the Cash Landrum incident of today. Cash Landrum was way back when, right at the age of nuclear propulsion, and this craft, comes down diamond shaped. The couple gets all the medical symptoms of radiation. The kid even does too. There's 19 Army Chinook helicopters, all the different things. We know there's these different technologies that are being explored, and they're dangerous when they're done by humans. But I would think that a more advanced civilization is more efficient and less dangerous. It wastes less energy. That's a tremendous amount of energy waste, So I think some of the craft that I've seen too, like the one that was glowing like, kind of like that. What's the wheel in London called? The giant wheel.
Yeah, on the Thames there, yeah. Mm-hmm.
On the Thames, and each capsule has a beautiful kind of capsule thing.
Yeah,
it was like that, where you could see the lines, and it was glowing this almost indescribable white and blue. And you see what you see. You know what I mean? It gets seared into your brain. And
Buddy, we have a question about it for you from
Please,
from Mick. Buddy has spent a lot of time with scientists lately. Are they using you to fly the UFO craft?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Thanks for the question.
But
are they still... Okay, so Thomas wants to know, are they still screwing with nuclear devices at Rendlesham or anywhere
absolutely.
else? Are
All
they
over the
doing
world
this
they are.
anywhere else?
All over the world. They just had an incident that Harry Reid hinted about in last year's New York Magazine about another incident that happened at Malmstrom. And I've been talking about for years. There is encounters with nuclear submarines, and whenever there's a major naval operation with nuclear ships, they almost always now will have one or two weird encounters, and the rate of encounters is going up. Of UFOs,
it is
not just because of the technology,
it is,
but also the amount per incident is going up. So they're seeing fleets tumbling out of the sky now instead of 3 or 4.
No, this is true, buddy. I just want to mention, and now you've been mentioning this Harry Reid incident to your credit, because it came out in Jamie Foxx's new movie, The Phenomenon, which I'm sure a lot of people. And Harry Reid is sitting there, and he didn't mention Miles. He didn't mention Warren.
Wow, I didn't know
he
that.
didn't mention Warren.
For 3 years.
Yeah, he didn't mention. You need to. Did you see Phenomenon? Because it's really good. They go.
I want to.
You did. They go into great detail into the Zimbabwe, the Ruha, Ariel School incident. They get the witnesses now. They brought them all back. They flew them. Jamie Foxx flew them to his studio, and they filmed them. Now they're adults.
Great case.
These kids were a couple feet from some other type of being with large eyes. And
it's happened to several schools. It wasn't just the Ariel School. There was another school. I forget what it was. And then there was the school in South Florida the year I was born.
And there was the Westall incident in Australia.
Westall.
So this reinforces our point, folks, that this could be happening all over, but we're not being told about it. I mean, witnesses sometimes don't talk about these things for decades. Just going back to the Dogman Bigfoot stories I'm reading in P.D. King's new book. New book. This is one of the authors. It's also Tim Lyons. Tom Lyons. Sometimes these people said, I've never told anyone about this. I'm so relieved to tell you my story that I've already told my spouse. It's just no one would believe me. And this is the same thing with these encounters. But to go back to Harry Reid, Bud, he says in the interview when Jamie asked him, do you mean most evidence? We haven't seen the evidence? There's still more evidence? And he said recently when he was getting interviewed on Joe Rogan that there was a very long pause, and then Reid picked up a glass of water. That's when they bring it back into the film. And he says, what I'm saying is most of it hasn't seen the light of day. Most of it hasn't. This is why there's so many witnesses out there, folks, and why we appreciate having you here on the show. Yeah. Because people are afraid to talk. Your next door neighbor, people never talk about it again. It's too weird. They're afraid of the repercussions.
Luis Elizondo said they have so much data and so much information that it's actually a security risk. Just from the ATIP OSAP program.
That's exactly what he said.
Exactly
right.
This stuff is happening every week. They're detecting them every day, every week.
I will give you another example that no one has ever heard about, but I was told. I ran into this UFO researcher, Pierre Lagrange, in the UK last 2 summers ago. And he told me that he had spoken to someone high up in the French military about this issue. And they're concerned about these little orbs coming around their nuclear facilities with going right over them, this, closed airspace, circling around the nuclear facilities. The French government put out a request to every drone manufacturer in France and beyond. Is this you? Are these your drones? Everyone said, no, we'd never do that. It's restricted airspace. They could not figure out. Some of them followed nuclear submarines. This is what Pierre told me, and he's mentioned I didn't know I was talking to someone that Jacques Vallée knew, a French UFO researcher that people over there know well. And he said that they've interfered with Navy exercises to the point where they canceled the exercises from these Tic Tac and orb-like
And
vehicles.
not only that, I've heard several different cases of sensors and things being taken. Like a ship will be dragging a certain sensor or type of thing, and it will be taken. And you hear that story again and again. And you're also hearing a lot of submarine stories and a lot of stories off the southeast coast and any major naval exercise. So
Now,
when
this
you go
is-
back to the control system thing, it's very curious. Is the rate increasing? Is that indicating something?
We don't know the half of it. Remember, Harry Reid, Senate Majority Leader for quite a while, says most of it hasn't seen the light of day. And that always brings me back to those stories that Richard Doty told me during that interview at Laughlin, which I can't confirm, though they've been repeated by Stephen Greer and others. The one where at the Omaha SAC base, where these beings materialized on the base and walked through all the security into a very secure sector and took out a very valuable piece of electronics that are necessary for, I would imagine, administering the missiles or something. We don't know exactly what they took. They just they paralyzed the guards, went through multiple levels of security deep into one of the buildings, pulled out one of the most secure pieces of electronics and walked away with it and left. And we've never heard about this. Now, I know this is super sensitive information. This is probably a level of classification way beyond my pay grade or yours.
Yeah.
But Doty mentioned it, and did it really happen? Steve Greer's mentioned this incident. Have you ever heard about this happening, Bud, or is it just...
No, I've heard of similar incidents and a reoccurring other incident, but I think you couldn't have anything more serious than something messing with our nuclear weapons.
Right.
So it's like a double trouble super story that it takes a Herculean effort almost to not cover it. It's so gigantic. And it's obvious they're trying to send some sort of message. It's obvious, it seems like we're really, I don't know, are we that stupid? We can't hide the truth, the reality of their existence forever.
No, and are they okay? So Bud, here's the question about the nukes, and this came up in the show Unidentified, right, on the History Channel, season 2.
Okay.
Right, they had the whole episode about the nukes, and then we found out that some of these missile control launch officers had contact experiences and all sorts of things we've never heard about, which goes back to your point that it's a lot to do with you too. It's not just that they're showing up randomly for people. Are they sending us a message, or are they preserving their own safety because those weapons, because they're atomic weapons, they can go transdimensional and affect space-time? They must affect the structure of space-time in parallel realities, at least hypothetically, which would mean that we would be affecting them, which they may not find acceptable. What do you think?
Well, in the very least, you would expect that they would think how stupid it would be to kill a glorious, diverse biosphere. And nuclear weapons just incinerate all life. And life is so precious beyond any value, pound for pound, in gold or diamonds or anything in the universe. And that, nature's majesty creates different life forms on different planets. And so much so that an advanced civilization would want to check us out. That's pretty cool. it's not really a testament to us. It's a testament to God's dynamism. But I think that, we're definitely being visited. There's no reason not to believe. The evidence is overwhelming if you do the basic research. It sounds outlandish and outrageous and a little frightening, but how, the Indians must have felt a little scared when they saw colonial people coming, and I think we will evolve, and we have to evolve. Now is the time.
Yes,
Yeah.
we have to evolve, and the virus situation again shows us we don't even know what's going on in our own microbiome, at just the biological level. We don't understand what's going on. It's not even going to physics, just straight biology. We can't even understand or deal with these viruses effectively, and you can see how fractured the government is. See, folks, here's the thing, and we'll get to the next question in a second, but I think this illustrates a very important point, buddy. The government's been entirely fractured in their response to COVID. The CDC comes out with something, the Trump administration says something different, and then people contradict each other, and there's no coordination. I had a COVID test a couple days ago. It's free now in the Boulder area. I mean, I guess it's free. I just went in, no line. A couple of days later, they call back. You're negative. That's only good for that day. 3 days ago. You don't. I mean, what are you supposed to go
6
back
months ago.
every day? You're supposed to go back. How are you supposed to?
6 months. This is a global pandemic.
It's a global
You cannot
pandemic.
solve it regionally. You have to solve it in a global
Exactly.
capacity.
Thank you,
And
buddy.
I
Thank
said
you.
6 months ago, if everybody stayed indoors for 3 weeks, and they had 2 weeks to prepare to stay indoors for 3 weeks, everyone did that. It would have been dead.
It would be gone.
The virus would have been gone by now.
It's true. That's
Or
what.
down to a dramatic, and that could still happen today. If everyone said, "Let's handle this as
Stay
what
home
it
for
is,
3
it's
weeks."
a global pandemic and not a local pandemic. It's a global pandemic, so we have to do. Everyone universally has to shut down for 3 weeks. And that's all
No,
it's gonna
and
take,
buddy,
3
they
weeks.
did it in Australia. They did it in New Zealand. The only things that were open were emergency medical, groceries, and gas. Otherwise, stay inside. You know what? Both countries declared themselves coronavirus free. They only have like 9 or 10 cases a day now, and it's
stupid.
9 or
It's so
10 for countries of that size, and we have 200,000+ cases. Now, folks, do you remember a couple months ago they said it was going to top out at 50 or 60,000 cases, and now it's over 200,000 a day. Isn't that right? Yeah, 200. If you check the stats,
Horrific. It's horrific.
new cases, and so is that right? Yeah, it's total. Excuse me, its total cases have exceeded 200,000, or
It's not good.
it's a
not
lot.
good, Doc.
It's a lot.
a lot.
It's about 10,000-15,000 in some states a day, so it's totaling about 200,000 new. But anyway, the point is, if that is that inaccurate, why do we expect them to know anything about UFOs or any of these other topics if they can't even agree
Right.
on something like a virus or have a coherent global response? So
You can't respond locally to a global problem. I mean, it just seems so obvious, and you can't cater to the local mentality because it's going to have a global consequence. So it just seems like a real no-brainer.
Yeah. So we have another question here. The Big Sur dummy warheads that were taken out by a UFO. Do you remember that? Was it Lieutenant Bob?
At Big Sur.
At Big Sur. What was his name again? The guy who's spoken about that was at the console that was filming it. I can remember his face. It will come back to me. He was the one that talked about that. Starts with a V. The base there, the Air Force base that does
Vandenberg?
Vandenberg missile testing.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Vandenberg missile testing. Of course, the Vandenberg being one of the big
Air
guys
Force
that
bases.
created, and created the missile system. I think General Vandenberg. There was the missile that went up, and then they were filming it. They had special telescopes to watch these dummy warheads, and one of them, he said, they went around and just zapped it,
Oh, pew, 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 pew,
and then
pew.
it spun
Yes.
out of control.
Famous case. Famous case.
This is something
Where's
that's
that footage.
famous case. So again, this is the point that it isn't to inspire fear. It's just that there's so much data yet to be processed. I just feel, buddy, that we've only gotten to 1 or 2% of it.
And you know what? Old men
officially.
cannot maintain the knowledge forever. This is information that has to be passed down. If it has to be relearned from scratch each time, this is edge science. And if you want, I hate to be, pro, democratic, but you want a democratic country to lead this new age of the reality that these technologies and events are happening. You want to be the country to say, yes, we're communicating with beings. We were smart enough and clever enough and humble enough to learn how to communicate with beings. And here's what's the deal.
Right
and
now,
people would normalize to that pretty quickly, I think. It just become like a new segment on the news instead of sports or weather. In aliens today, we got a new vaccine.
And that's a good point, buddy, because people say, where are they? Well, if they're shooting down your warheads over and over and interfering with your military exercises and tampering with your weapon systems, and this goes on for decades. I mean, how much more brazen could it be?
They're playing with your kids, so they're obviously not horrific. They're literally dancing up and down and playing with their kids. There's cases like where craft have been saved. The famous Hendersonville, I think it was, 1957, where the helicopter went into the steep dive and the tractor beam brought it up and leveled it off and made sure it was okay.
Yeah, and that case, the Mansfield, Ohio case in '72, which Jacques Vallée talked about. Remember the National Guard helicopters coming back from a training exercise or something, and the beam comes down, the green beam, and all of a sudden they find they're 2,000 feet higher in elevation. Now, your interpretation of that is they were saving the helicopter from, it was losing altitude.
Yeah, it was doing a steep dive.
Because the pilot was so flipped out by the craft, and all of a sudden the tractor beam comes out. Julie's saying something here important. When elders die, voluminous knowledge is lost. And I really agree with that, Julie. I've heard too many people say that it's okay for people above 70 to die because they're old. And I think that's a terrible thing to say. I mean, you don't. That's geronticide. You don't just say, okay, over a certain age, well, they were going to die anyway by, within 20 years, so it just doesn't matter because young people don't die from it. You're losing knowledge. That's exactly right. You're losing experience. You can't survive without elders. Otherwise, you're going to take centuries to recreate all the stuff that those elders knew that you're going to have to rediscover for yourself. This is why all societies have elderly people around, because they contribute a lot. They contribute experience.
Mortality sucks because old people are very wise, and when they pass, you're like, all that wisdom and all that knowledge about this whole game is gone.
Exactly right.
We all are entitled to play the game, to experience it. That's our ticket.
Yes.
And so that's what we're doing. We're experiencing it. And, like the show is an example of, if you're going to experience this thing, go to the edge. Explore the edge.
Yeah, don't be afraid.
To the edge.
We've all got each other here. We've all got each other, so don't be afraid. Explore these topics. We're not going to get burned at the stake anymore, folks. I don't think the men in black are coming at you anymore.
No.
Let me tell you something I've been told by people who work in the government. They want this information to come out. I've asked people who've worked in the government about how far you can go with this before. They said, as long as you don't have a piece of something that could be weaponized by another country, we don't care. That's what the words were. We don't care. Just talk. No one's going to believe you anyway. We would rather them laugh at you than at the federal government. So you go ahead and knock yourself out. All the stories, it's all true. Just keep talking, because most people aren't going to believe you. And we're all the icebreakers here. And I don't really care one way or another if they believe me. But the point is, at least we get to speak our truth. We get to explore these topics. And we're doing it in a safe way here. We're not revealing any national security information, nothing that could be weaponized by another country. Well, you are, buddy, occasionally. Okay. Buddy, we have a question about your dog. How's your dog doing?
Miss Sausages is doing okay. Let's take a look at her, shall we? She's not doing that great today. I don't know if you can see her. Miss Sausages. She's hiding right here. She's a little sausage. I don't know if you can see her. But that's Miss Sausages. She's got this rash that's just not going away. I changed the food, and it doesn't seem to be working, and I have to take her back to the vet, and I really can't can afford to right now, but she seems to be kind of miserable because there's some spots on her back that are red, and there's not little tiny like micro scabs, almost as it's some sort of allergic reaction.
Yeah.
So I'm worried about Miss
Oh,
Sausage.
well, everybody take care of your pets out there, and I think
Just give them love.
The one
Love,
thing
love,
that's really good that's come out of this is that the pet shelters are apparently emptied out of pets.
Yeah,
Because
love
people
heals.
were so lonely being at home, they realized how much those cats and dogs really add to your lives, pets. You know, they
cool.
add a lot. So anyway, buddy, anything else you want to say before we wrap it up? It's been a great session. I appreciate all your questions, folks. And Pat says he had one like her for 18 years. That's why he asked. That's why he asked that.
Oh, thank you.
Julie
Pat. This is
says, put
17.
some honey on it. The rash.
Honey, that's a good idea.
Honey on it, buddy.
Look it
Okay,
up.
thanks, Jules.
It's a good one. Love you, Jules.
Benadryl can work great for it. Okay. So anyway, folks, listen, thanks. We've had a great session. Obviously, there's so much to talk about. We could be here all day, but we've all got things that we need to do to take care of our lives. It's a Sunday night. So we will see you again sometime soon. And
we have to do the second half of the quiz next show.
Next show, we're going to do the second half of the quiz. That was a lot of fun, but it got interrupted by our bandwidth issues in the forest. Remember that, buddy?
Yes. And we'll do predictions. I'll have predictions for next year. So we have to do that before the end of the year. There's a lot to cram in, Doc.
A lot. Oh, my God. New Year's coming up. We have to do our new show. Oh, Mick, by the way, Mick is saying here to you, aloe vera. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bees.
Aloe vera is a great idea.
Someone wants to talk about disappearing bees. And hey, Signal, how you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Disappearing bees is a tragedy of pesticides and human
stupidity. Oh, Galactic Federation. Okay, we're gonna get. We'll do this in the next show. No, let's do it in the next show because we remote viewed it at Farsight, and I was there, buddy.
Okay.
I was at the base. I got transported to the base, and I will tell you what I saw.
This is going to be amazing. That's going to be an episode worth waiting for, my friends. Love
okay,
you guys.
folks, let me go. We're going to go to our intro music here. Thanks a lot, folks, and we will see you at on Reality's Edge.
Edge.
Hey Doc, I know this show is called Reality's Edge, but I think I got a little too close to the edge. Oh, spaghettification!
Scanning all possibilities. Scanning all possibilities. Data in. The most productive and stimulating use of your time would be the next episode of Reality's Edge with Doc and Buddy.
Reality's Edge with Doc and Buddy will teach you how to contact
The beyond. And maybe a little further.